Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and in this episode, I want to talk about a notion that Ryan Holiday presented in his book, Stillness is the Key. And it's the idea that oftentimes we feel that a sign of success is having a full calendar. And I think a lot of the panic and fear and anxiety, frankly, that's happening right now with the pandemic is from people freaking out because they have a lot more free time on their hands. But what he argues, what Ryan Holiday argues, is the idea that having a calendar with nothing on it is actually a sign of success because it means you dictate how your day goes. And that's a very radical notion to some people. It's certainly, like, when I first heard it, it was to me. There's a great story about Charles Dickens. Someone invited him to lunch, and he said, let me take you out to lunch. It'll only be an hour. And Charles Dickens declined. He said, listen, to you it might just be an hour, but for me, I'm going to be thinking about it from the moment I get up, and then I'm going to have to get ready for it, walk there. Then it's going to be an hour, and then I have to come back, and then got to get in my groove. So, I won't even have been really in my groove because I'll have been thinking about this and so forth. Now, that might sound very selfish, but, writing for Charles Dickens, that was, he defined that as a key priority in his life. And so he got to dictate life on his own terms. And I think by having a free schedule, that means that you are dictating life on your own terms. Now, obviously, this is, it's kind of a notion easier said than done. We all have jobs, and certainly that fills up the 9-to-5 slot, or, pre-pandemic, and now maybe that's not the case. And, I'm sorry about that. But the idea that, of course, there's going to be things that we have to do that require our time, and so forth. But, now, again, I think a lot of us in this pandemic, by staying at home and so forth, we are confronted with the idea, now who are we, right? And I think that's the big notion of all of this. We kind of, especially as Americans, define ourselves by our job, but that's just what we do. That's not who we are. And now we really have to really consider, who are we? What are our passions? What gives us purpose in life? Simon Sinek has the idea, start with why. Why do you want something in life? And the what of it can change in various ways. My passion is to make great art and also help aspiring artists. Now, how I go about it could be completely different ways, right? So, I'm writing a book, I'm making a movie, I'm, all kinds of different things. I've worked on music, of all things, with some of my musician friends. And it's so there's not one form of entertainment that I enjoy over the other. I just like doing that stuff, right? And that's really cool. So, but why? Well, because it brings me joy, right? So, going back to the notion, I also understood that these are my passions. And, once I kind of understood that, I also knew what I was fighting for. So it's kind of like with finances. Oftentimes people will say, I want $1 million. And I'm like, well, what do you want the $1 million for? You just like the idea of we fight for $1 million because we think it'll bring us this financial freedom. But if you don't even know what you want to do with your financial freedom, then it's not going to really work, right? And so for me, I really kind of got down to brass tacks and defined my why, which was, again, I want to make cool art and help aspiring artists as well, based on the things that I learned. And that allowed me to kind of have a goal. And when I had that, then I continued to move in a direction where more and more so, how my day is filled is within my control. I am controlling my calendar. Again, I know it sounds so simple, but it's actually a very radical notion to some people, because I know some people, if their calendar wasn't filled, they would feel completely empty inside. And, the common term for that is workaholic. And, the great notion is, it's not to say that if that's your passion, you can't do that, but it's more so, is that what you want to be doing? So all in all, it's just about really kind of redefining what success means for all of us, and especially to you. And part of that whole thing is, a lot of self-help really is all about, like, you kind of know intrinsically what you want, but you got to be really willing to listen to, some people call it your intuition, your gut, whatever it may be. And now more than ever, I hope and I imagine if you're taking the time to listen to this right now, that you do have some free time on your hands, and that life, even in these dire circumstances, is by all extent okay, right? So that way you take the time to really reflect and really define, what do you want moving forward? Because I think I put this out on Twitter. The biggest tragedy of this coronavirus will not be the virus itself. It would be if nothing changes. And certainly I'm aspirational in the sense that, I mean that for like systemic change, but also individual change. I want to change myself for the better during this time. And I encourage you to really reflect upon and figure out what that might mean for you. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Thank you for taking the time to join me. If you have any questions or thoughts of your own, comment down below or hit me up on social media. And if you aren't subscribed or following me but enjoy what I'm doing, I would encourage you to do so. That way you get all the various lessons that I put out right when I put them out. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope to see you next time.